The introduction of the Fall Guys event in Final Fantasy XIV is probably one of the most eye-opening moments in the history of the game. Between how brutal the snapshotting feels, the ruthless grind for the King and Queen Bean titles, and the cheating that is spawned from it, let's talk about what Fall Guys means for the future of the game. First off, you've probably either heard by now or experienced yourself how difficult not getting hit can be in the event. If you have any kind of experience with the combat in the game, something here just feels a little different or off. It's been a real eye-opening moment because if you don't do high-end content at all, this is probably the first time you really experienced anything like this. Most of the game, at least in normal content, is just very generous with how much time you have to escape being hit by things. In Fall Guys, this isn't the case. The animations and snapshot timings are just brutal, or I guess at the very least, very literal. I mean, I've even heard people saying that it feels stricter than Savage. I do a lot of Savage raiding myself, and I sort of agree, but also I just feel like it's really natural for Fall Guys in general. The problem is that this issue is just really complicated. Now first off, you've probably heard people talking about the netcode a lot. It's a very common talking point, especially in high-end raiding scenes. Things like how certain jobs just don't play well if your ping sucks, or how things just don't feel very responsive. And now ping is less of a netcode equation and more of a distance issue, but still, Final Fantasy XIV is no stranger to things like constant packet loss, and it definitely feels less responsive compared to other games on the market. This was a pretty big complaint of a lot of people who came from WoW to try out Final Fantasy. One way to really understand how the game views what you're doing is to look at your friends streaming the game while you're also streaming it at the same time. Even if you think you're running right next to them, on their screen you'll actually be a little ways behind them. This is why if you've ever seen someone who looks like they got hit by a mechanic but actually didn't, it's because they were already out of it on their screen, it just lagged behind on your screen. Now, while I don't want to get too deep into the nuances of the netcode, especially because, I'm not the one who made it, I just want to bring it up because it is a common talking point about Fall Guys, and I think that it is relevant. Now, just to loop it back into the snapshotting discussion, when you get hit by a mechanic, it's when the cast bar finishes. The game then looks to see if you're in the AoE marker before it goes off. Sometimes, especially in Savage, the actual AoE marker of the attack is hidden, or it appears briefly before the attack goes off, so you wouldn't have time to actually react to it. The tricky part is, sometimes the actual area that you have to be away from is smaller than the attack animation itself, so it might look like you got hit by a kick from the boss or something, even though you actually dodged it because you were out of the invisible ground AoE marker. This is just a really core component of how the game works in general. Now Square definitely does put some work into mitigating some of the issues with this, and they'll kind of delay the timing of animation so that it does match up with the cast bar. And for the most part, they do a good job with this. That being said, it isn't perfect. This is where Fall Guys comes into play. Now don't get me wrong, I definitely have seen people experiencing some really egregious lag and issues like an axe hitting them 2 seconds after they ran out, but it's hard to know if that's netcode or simply their own connection issues. Now I can only speak for myself when I say that my connection's really stable and I haven't experienced much of this myself. When a mechanic happens like a hammer swinging or some bumper moving, I get hit by it and it looks really accurate to me. So it's really important to keep this in mind when other people are showing what's happening to them because, they're showing what happens in the game, not if they have a really bad router or something, And while I'm not saying that everyone has bad connections because yeah, the game itself does have a lot of issues with packet loss, but I think what I'm trying to say is that the intent is for these attacks to be really strict on purpose because it feels just like the game itself. And by the game itself, I mean the original Fall Guys game. I don't really think that from a design perspective, a lot of the generous snapshotting would really work well in Fall Guys. The original game is just very responsive and I feel like Square really tried to recreate that experience within Final Fantasy XIV's engine limitations. And I think the result of that is, if your internet is stable and you're not experiencing packet loss randomly, which happens a lot, especially in North America, it feels pretty good. But if anything goes wrong between your game's communication with the servers, you have some really funky stuff going on. So it's just kind of good until it isn't. Should Square have maybe taken an approach where the netcode was just a little more generous and delayed so that people would not be hit as much? Maybe, but the chaotic person in me kind of enjoys seeing all the shenanigans going on. I just know that it really is frustrating when you think that you didn't get hit but you actually did. Why this is really interesting is that it puts a big spotlight on the netcode of Final Fantasy XIV. Before Fall Guys, it was mostly raiders who complained about this. Now you have the entire casual audience who's trying out Fall Guys being like, what the heck is going on? Why am I getting hit? To me, this could be a really good thing. I mean, we know that Square is aware of the netcode issues of the game. And honestly, I shouldn't even be saying just netcode, because the larger umbrella of connection issues is much more than that. If you're watching this video right when it comes out, Next week we're getting the cloud server test, so that should be really interesting. I don't quite know what to expect for besides allowing more players to play on a server at once, but who knows? Maybe this could mean better connection for players, and even a more responsive one. In any case, these frustrations have been building a lot, and they kind of lead into the next issue that I want to talk about. The King and Queen Bean titles. If you didn't know, there's a title for winning 100 rounds of Fall Guys, and this has been really stressing people out. You see, a lot of people in this game are really focused on being completionists, and they want to kind of get everything that they can, and a new title to unlock means a new goal. The problem is, people are doing this despite not liking the Fall Guys mode sometimes. You see, when you play Fall Guys, you're against 23 other players. Winning just isn't easy, and it takes a lot of time and practice. Even if you're using guides or studying things like those diagrams going around on Japanese Final Fantasy Twitter, it still takes a lot of time and effort to win. I mean, think about it. You're getting matched up against 23 other players, and a lot of them are putting in just as much effort as you are. And some people might even have just an easier time because of their connection. Say if they're closer to the servers or something. I see so many people complaining about the balance and difficulty because they want the title. And I think it's causing people to kind of miss the point of the mode in general. Fall Guys is there for us to just kind of have fun and enjoy something really silly. While I don't know if I agree with some people saying that the title was a mistake because I think it's a fun title to shoot for, it's definitely something that I think most people shouldn't be specifically trying to go for, instead of just kind of letting it happen over time. After all, Fall Guys won't be gone for good when they take it away in December, it'll come back rotationally, they've said. As far as how often that is, we don't really know, but this won't be your last chance at getting the title or playing the mode in general. But I do get that people have a feeling of FOMO. Just, feeding into it by going into a mode you don't enjoy over and over probably isn't the best way to deal with that. But hey, if you enjoy collecting titles or achievements for the sake of it, just do what's fun for you. Just try to make sure that you're actually having fun, For most of these titles, no one really cares that you have it besides you. So just keep that in mind when you force yourself to do stuff that you don't even enjoy yourself, especially if you don't even plan on using the title in the first place. And now I have a question for you. Let me know in the comments if you care about getting the title and why. Or even if you have friends who have been struggling with the game because they've been trying to go for the title. Either way, thanks for being here and watching the video, even if you don't agree with everything that I have to say. And if you want to talk about more things like this, I'd love it if you join my Discord. I think it'd be really fun to have a growing community of Final Fantasy players who just enjoy different parts of the game, including Fall Guys and other things. But anyway, let's get back to the video. Now here's where the title stuff gets messy. All that obsession over getting the title and getting 100 wins has led to some people turning to really nefarious methods. If it wasn't obvious, I'm talking about cheating. Already, I've seen people using tools that show you exactly where the AoEs are going to hit in Fall Guys. Typically, especially in the final round, if you see a marker, that means you've already been hit by it. With the cheating mods that I've been seeing, that's not the case. People are able to see the AoE long before it actually hits them, which means they can dodge it. This can give people a pretty big advantage in the final round, since all that mode is running up the hill while dodging AoEs the whole time. Combine that with more egregious things like people who are using speed hacks to fly around and just get to the end immediately, it's pretty intense. If you're ever in a match and you see someone finishing the round seconds after it started, you obviously know what happened there. It seems like a lot of people really don't care to blatantly cheat at the mode. And I'm sure for everyone who does do this, there are other people who are just moving ever so slightly faster in a way that other people wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at them. Just enough to win without getting caught. And of course, it sucks to see this, because it ruins the mode for everyone else who's just trying to have fun. If you watched my previous video on PvP cheating, I talked a lot more in depth about the issue in general, but it's definitely safe to say that there are plenty of people who want to win at all costs, even if it means risking getting banned just to get a title. And hey, I'm not in their head, but I just don't know how that's worth it. And like the snapshotting issue, it's putting a much bigger spotlight on cheating than ever before. As wild as the cheating issues were in that previous video that I made, PvP in general isn't a popular mode at all. And as far as cheating goes in raiding, most of that's on the client side. You as a player can't really tell when someone else is doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Meanwhile, in Fall Guys, a competitive mode with a lot of people and a lot of casual players, it's a much more obvious issue. As far as what this means, I'm not sure. Maybe Square will take a bigger look at people who cheat in the game. I've already heard that the anti-cheat in Fall Guys specifically is a lot more thorough than the stuff in PvP, which is kind of hilarious and fascinating at the same time, but still. Nothing causes change more than a lot of people talking about it. And of all the things to get people to talk about the netcode issues and snapshotting and cheating in Final Fantasy XIV, who would have thought that it would be Fall Guys to cause it to happen? In any case, keep enjoying Blunderville and I'll catch you in the next video.